Good afternoon and welcome. And thanks for joining us for this virtual career series, career speakers session. We're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month and Construction Month by interviewing outstanding professionals in their field. Today, we're going to visit with Ben Galvan, who is the president of Civil Corps in Victoria. Ben will tell us about taking the road to becoming a registered professional civil engineer and beyond, as he is also the founder and president of his own firm. Also joining us from Civil Corps is Brandon Absher, who is a registered professional land surveyor and a project manager. So we appreciate these gentlemen taking their time to tell us about some exciting careers that are available in this area. The session is going to be recorded and it will be available on YouTube later on. Please put any questions in the chat. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the session over to Ben and Brandon.
Well, thank you, Kathy, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ben Galvan, and I am the owner and president of Civil Corps. Civil Corps is an engineering land surveying company with our corporate office here in Victoria, Texas. And we also have branch offices in Corpus Christi, in Houston, in Fulshire, and in Round Rock. A little bit about me. I am a Victoria native. I graduated Victoria High School in 1981. And if you do the math, that's 40 years ago. And I can tell you this, that 40 years are going to go by really, really quick for some of you that are graduating this year. It's going to be a flashback. So embrace it and enjoy it. I graduated college from Texas A&I, which is now Texas A&M Kingsville, back in 1986 with a degree in civil engineering. And after working a few years, I went back and I got my master's degree in business from the University of Houston here in Victoria. I'm a registered professional engineer and also a registered professional land surveyor. After I graduated with my civil engineering degree, I worked for the Texas Department of Transportation for 14 years. After that, I went to work for a consultant here in Victoria, managing their Victoria branch office. And then back in 2008, I bought out that branch office and I started Civil Corps. So we started Civil Corps back in 2008. And since that time, we've grown our business. We started with about 10 to 12 employees, and we're probably about 110 to 150 employees right now. As the owner and president of Civil Corps, I manage the overall operations of our business, and we provide civil engineering services, land surveying services, construction inspection services, and we work for different developers. We work for cities, counties, and the state of Texas. And we do work all across the state. We've had projects during the same week, all the way north to Amarillo, south to the Valley, going to El Paso and going to Beaumont. So we cover all corners of the state of Texas with our work. Some of the projects that I worked on here locally that y'all might be familiar with. First one I'll start with is Loop 463, which is actually signed now as US 77, but it's on the west side of town, crosses the Guadalupe River. And I worked on that project in the late 90s to the mid 90s. It was a really cool project. There was no road out there. I was able to actually design a brand new road on new location across the river. So that was a really exciting project for me to work on. And it's actually been expanded since that time. So you're an old engineer when the projects you worked on as a young engineer are now being widened out. So that's a telltale sign of your age, but it's still very exciting to see those projects out there. Some other projects, Sam Houston Drive reconstruction, that's here in Victoria, the John Stockbar Drive reconstruction, the Glasgow Street reconstruction, and then more recently, the Plazo Benavides project, which is on the north side of town. And that's the new road that goes from Salem Road up towards Lowe's and Walmart. So those are really cool projects to work on. And what I really like about my job is being able to work on projects from a conceptual design working with our clients just on a concept to get into to final construction. And we get to go from a concept design to doing plan work to construction and working with contractors, getting our projects constructed. Very gratifying work for us, and it's something that we really enjoy doing. And so this afternoon, we're going to have a segment on surveying. Surveying is a big part of our engineering plan development process. Without a good, accurate survey, we can't have good, accurate engineering plans. So the surveying is basically the groundwork for the engineering work that's going to follow. And this afternoon, we have Brandon Absher with us. Brandon is he's a project manager. He's a registered professional land surveyor here in our Victoria office. And so he manages most of the projects here in Victoria. He works cooperatively with clients and with TxDOT on projects all across the state. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Brandon, and Brandon's going to give you a little history of land surveying and talk to you about what his career path was and what you needed to do and work on to become a land surveyor. So Brandon, we'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, like I said, my name's Brandon Absher, and I'm a professional land surveyor here at Civil Corps. Started off with this slide just showing how land surveyors were practicing social distancing long before COVID came around. And what you see there is a typical office view for a lot of land surveyors. So if something like that interests you, just listen up and we can talk a little bit more about it. A little bit about me. Like I said, I'm an RPLS here at Civil Corps. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Geographic Information Science from the University of Texas. And I've been surveying at Civil Corps for about 7, almost 8 years. And overall, I've had about 10 years of surveying experience. I'm married to my wife, Tiffany, who is a principal at Smith Elementary here. Some of y'all may remember her as Miss Absher if y'all had her as a teacher, maybe at Hopkins or Guadalupe Elementary over the past few years. And then I have 3 kids, Bryson, Emma, and Owen. And when I'm not surveying, I like to either be fishing or hunting. That usually takes up the bulk of my time. Now, I want to talk about why I chose land surveying or how I chose land surveying. And I think it's a path that a lot of people in my position went through. I did not leave high school saying I wanted to be a land surveyor. I don't think I knew what a land surveyor was when I left high school. Nobody ever talked to me about it or showed me anything. I originally went to college to become an electrical engineer, and I studied that for almost 2 years. Shortly after I began college, I got an internship with GVEC and then a later internship with the LCRA, who are LCRA does electrical distribution and generation. They also control the Colorado River. GVEC does electrical distribution. And I got to work with surveyors there and learn about the job, about the profession. And I realized I liked it a lot. And so I started to research it as pursuing that as a career. And so some of the first things I found was it has a high salary potential. That's what everyone likes, right? You can make a very good living becoming a surveyor. The second thing was the job opportunities were there, and they are expected to continue to be there for years to come. A lot of data suggests that the opportunities are expected to increase about 20% over the next decade, and I expect that to continue or possibly get even higher. Another great thing was being able to work outdoors, like we saw in that first picture. You have the option as a land surveyor to work outside or to work inside when it's blazing hot or freezing cold. And that's something that I really look forward to, having those days where I don't have to sit in the office all day. And I think that's something very attractive to a lot of people. The last item is it's something new every day. So all those projects Ben was talking about, surveyors got to work on those at some point. And each of them have a very unique challenge, something you can look at each day freshly and have something new to work on. Really gets rid of the monotony and makes for a high value career that I think everyone would enjoy. But the question is, what is a surveyor? Because most of y'all probably don't know. I certainly didn't know when I was your age. A lot of guys think we're the people that go door to door and ask you how you like your vacuum cleaner and write it down on a piece of paper. But that is a surveyor, but not a land surveyor. We do a lot of different things, and here's some of the misconceptions that people have about surveying. But to sum it up, there's essentially two types of land surveys. There's a boundary survey and a topographic survey. Now, both of those surveys are done in a wide range of fields. I work a lot in transportation. Oil and gas requires all types of surveying, electric transmission, municipal planning, all that requires surveying. But each of those is a boundary survey or a topographic survey. And so the first item I'm going to talk about is a boundary survey, which is kind of the bread and butter of what we do as licensed professionals. And just to read this, it's to apply legal principles to boundary evidence found on the ground based on historical documentation to determine the location of boundary lines. It's kind of a lot of word salad there. So what does it mean? What we do to start is somebody comes in and they say, we need a land survey. We need to know where our property lines are. We say, okay, we can do that. First step is to log on to the courthouse or go to the courthouse and get the deeds for the property. And what the deed of the property is going to do is it's going to describe what that person owns. And our job is to review that data. Sometimes it's done very recently. Sometimes it's like you see in the bottom right-hand corner where it was done well over 100 years ago, written in cursive and very difficult to read. But either way, we have to look at it with the same light and figure out where those boundary corners are. So on an older document, like the one you see on the right, the boundary corners would have been a marked tree, like I have a picture of up top, with just an X blazed into a tree, or maybe it would have been a pile of rocks, or just a rock or an old stump, sometimes a fence post. Whereas current surveys, we generally don't use trees anymore. We're going to use iron rods, or like you see in this bottom picture, a brass cap buried in concrete. And the reason for that is what we use to find these corners is a metal detector. And so we want things that will react to that. So we take these deeds, we see what they call for, whether it be a stone or an iron pipe, and we go out into the field and we try to find them. And we generally know about where to look just based on our experience and where the deed says it is. We find those items, as many as we can, and we come back, we evaluate it, and we determine where the boundary lines are for any given property. And normally what we provide to our client is a map like you see on the bottom left. That's a pretty current, pretty recent survey. It clearly shows where the property lines are. It gives bearings and distances to each of those. It would show improvements if they were out there, like if your house was there. It shows acreage or lot size. And in addition to that, probably one of the most important things is what gets recorded when you sell your property is a legal description of the property, describing exactly where that property is. So a surveyor in the future could come and locate the boundary lines. And this is something that is used in a lot of mortgage survey or mortgages for lenders. Realtors need it, developers need it. It's what you need a license to perform. And it's really the bread and butter of surveying. The next item there is topographic surveying. And just to read this off, it's measure and catalog all features within a given project location to be used by engineers, architects, construction contractors, landowners, and others when developing a property. So what does that mean? Well, topographic surveying is taking a project location and identifying all the features. So a feature could be a tree, it could be a fire hydrant, a driveway, a culvert, mailbox, buildings, anything that's on a property. And so if you think about it, an architect, if he's going to design a house to go on a piece of property, he needs to know what he's dealing with. Is there a driveway existing? Where are the property lines? Is there a fire hydrant we need to be sure we don't block, or we can't put the driveway through it? And a civil engineer, they're trying to make sure that the water is going to flow off the property correctly. And so to create that drainage plan, they need to know the elevations of all of those features. They need to know the size of the culvert and the elevation of the ditches and the culverts that are in them. All this information is used by others to further develop the plans. And to collect all this information, we use a lot of different tools, a lot of different instruments. And this goes for both boundary and topo surveying. So I wanted to start off with some of the older instruments that were out there. And the reason I'm showing this is because when you're performing a survey, you have to understand how the previous survey was performed. So in the top left, there's a compass, and that was used in the 1800s to perform surveys, where they would sight down the two ends of it and record the angle that it showed. And then they moved on to the transit and theodolite, which are the two middle items there. And then finally, the total station, which is still somewhat in use today. And all these were used to measure angle of lines. So you could set up in one point and measure radially to get an angle for all of the features, all of the property corners that are in a given location. Now, to measure distance, things have changed a lot more than you would think. So in the 1800s, we used what's called a Gunter's chain, which is on the left side there. And that was two guys would pull it and they would measure distances with that. And usually it was within the closest, a lot of times it was Vera, so about 3 feet. Nowadays we measure a lot tighter than that, usually down to about 1/4 inch. Next, we used a steel tape. And then finally on the right side is what's called an EDM, an electronic distance measurer. That uses light lasers to shoot a reflector like you see on the right side there and get a distance reading. So a lot of y'all might have used it if you're hunting to use like a rangefinder, or when you golf, a rangefinder to see how far away you are from the pin. It's the same technology. It's just what we use is a lot more accurate. Like I said, down to less than 1/4 inch. Current equipment that we use, GPS is the main one. That's really what almost every surveyor is going to have in their truck. A lot of you probably use GPS almost every day. Every time you log into Google Maps and type in where you want to go, your GPS is telling you how to get there. The GPS on your phone is accurate within a few feet, maybe 3-4 feet at the most. The GPS we use in surveying is accurate down to well under 1 inch, maybe even less than 1/4 inch in some cases. And so that's needed, that accuracy is needed, especially when you're talking about, measuring areas of a commercial lot that is going to sell by the square foot. So if we were off 3 feet, that could be tens of thousands of dollars, say in downtown Houston or something like that. The other instrument we use there it looks a lot like the total station from the previous picture, but what's different about this one is it's a robot. And so it shoots the little reflector you see in the bottom right, and it follows it around. So everywhere the guy moves, it's holding that reflector, it follows it, it moves up, down, left, right, and it can take a shot, and it's all run remotely from the person holding the reflector, so he can control it with a remote control. And the last thing is all of these are connected to the internet. So we're able to send that data immediately from the field to wherever we're working, whether the job is here in Victoria or El Paso, we can get it essentially real time. And that's one of the big, jumps in technology that we've had over the last few years. So these are kind of the basic tools we use. These are what you're going to see in every vehicle. And just to give you an idea, a robotic instrument like that is going to cost somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. So, the cost of a nice car really is the kind of toys we get to play with as surveyors. Now, for some of the cutting edge technology, the super modern, almost futuristic stuff we began using, mostly has to do with laser scanning. And what you see there, those top 3 items are all laser scanners, and they're just mounted differently. So the one on the left is a laser scanner that takes millions of shots and provides what you see in the bottom left, which is a point cloud. Every little dot is a point with horizontal information, so we can get the X and Y on it, and the elevation. And the advantages of this is you can collect huge amounts of data in a given area in a very short amount of time. And so then we've taken that and we've mounted it on vehicles, we've mounted it on drones, helicopters, planes, where we can cover huge distances and collect huge amounts of data. Whereas before we would have had to do it on the ground with a total station or a GPS, and it could take, months or maybe even years to collect what you could collect with this. Now, there are some limitations, but this technology is revolutionizing surveying, and it's something we get to play with. It's really cool. I mean, who doesn't want to go fly a drone, in the afternoon with a laser scanner on it? It's awesome. And the last thing is we get to do bathymetric surveys, which means surveys in the water. That's a remote control boat we have that you can just drive it around and it collects the data, in the lakes, rivers, creeks. And there's also an option where you can set it to go autonomous and it will just drive around the lake for you. It's basically a drone, but a boat. It's really cool stuff. Technology is super ingrained into surveying, and it's one of the reasons I got into surveying as well. So that's kind of our tools. Those are our instruments. That's what we do. But what does it look like for a career? So one of the top reasons people get into it is that you can work your way up. You can start in the bottom. Almost every surveyor at some point started at an entry-level position. Now, to become licensed, to become a professional surveyor, you do have to have some education. There's a 2-year pathway and a 4-year pathway currently to become a licensed surveyor. Now, that's changed over the years. For a while, it was only a 4-year degree. And then in this past legislative session, they changed it where a 2-year degree was allowed. How that's going to continue, I'm not sure. A lot of experts are saying that it's going to go back to a 4-year degree requirement. Now, that doesn't mean you can't pursue surveying and get a degree as you work, which I highly recommend. And there's a lot of positions that don't require a degree, and I'd like to kind of talk about those and what those positions earn. So if we start at the top or close to the top, I'd say is your senior project manager. This would be someone that maybe isn't the owner, maybe isn't a vice president of the company, but is a senior project manager. They manage the staff that performs the CAD work. They probably manage some licensed surveyors. They manage all the field operations, as well as just general operations of the survey department. And these numbers are from a 2020 study, and that project manager is going to make around $113,000 a year, which is pretty good money, I think, in today's market. And just a note on all these, I expect all of them to go up over the next few years. The next position would be a project surveyor. So this would be someone that's just gotten out of college, or maybe 3 or 4 years out of college, has passed their surveying exams. They're determining boundaries, they're overseeing crews, overseeing staff, just kind of getting into the professional side of it. The next person there would be the survey technician. They are someone generally that's highly skilled with computer drafting, very technology driven, and they're going to be the person that draws up a lot of the surveys. They process the data. They take all those laser shots and turn them into something useful for an engineer, an architect, or the surveyor to use. And that position doesn't require education, but it's highly recommended that you have a strong background in computer-aided drafting or a degree in computer-aided drafting. The field component of that would be the survey party chief. And so the survey party chief, they are in charge of all the field operations. So they direct the other field crew members. They decide how they're going to collect that shot. They're in charge of their equipment, and they're in charge of making sure the data is collected in the best way possible and the most accurate way possible. Those generally make around $50,000 a year, and that continues to grow up. And the last two there, the instrument man and rodman, those are your more entry-level positions. they're going to be operating the instrument, operating the rod, trying to learn everything they can so they can move into one of these other positions. Now, I included this comic, which I like a lot, and it kind of shows the progression of a land surveyor that I think a lot of people have, or a lot of surveyors have experienced. And it starts there with the rodman, and he's looking there like he's bored and seeing the instrument man and says, man, I wish I could be that instrument man. That looks like a cake job. So then he becomes the instrument man and he says, man, I wish I could be the party chief and just, look at plans while we do all the hard work. And so that instrument man becomes the party chief, and he's just killing himself over the plans and just thinking, man, look at that licensed surveyor that's over in the office and just, sleeping at his desk. And then next thing you know, you're the licensed surveyor sitting at your desk going, man, I just wish I could go back to being a rodman. And I don't think I'm at that point yet, but I think a lot of people have gone through that progression. And it shows you that you really can move all the way from an entry-level position to a senior position. So as a career, what does that mean for you? Well, surveying generally is going to be for someone that enjoys history, enjoys law, and is pretty good at mathematics and engineering. There's a fairly large math component to becoming a land surveyor. There's 2 tests we have to pass to become land surveyors. And the first one is very, very much a math exam. And the second one is very much a law and history exam. So every time we look at these surveys, we have to go back in time and be historians and look at the surveyor that was there 100, 150 years ago and follow their footsteps and understand what they did. And then we apply law, case law or statutory law, to determine where that property line should go. And then the mathematics involved, it's a lot of trigonometry and stuff to figure out where those points hit based on the measurements we took in the field. Another thing about surveying is it's high demand, and there's many types of surveyors, and you can pick to be the one you want. Do you want to be a surveyor that works in the office and manages huge projects and gets to look at all kind of different things? Or would you rather be someone that's out in the field and gets to walk through the woods all the time? Or would you like to do something of both? Do you want to work in the oil and gas industry? Do you want to work in transportation? Do you want to work for a government entity? It's all up to you, and there's opportunities in every single one of those fields. And with that, balancing your time between the indoors and outdoors, there's a lot of surveyors that spend half their time outside, half their time inside. We get to use the newest technologies, what we talked about. And every time something new comes out, surveyors are on top of it. We're trying to figure out how we can leverage that technology to work for us. And probably one of the biggest draws to surveying that I'd say is the freedom to work for yourself. When you have that license, you have the option to have your own company. It gives you a lot of freedoms that maybe a lot of other professions don't allow for. And that's probably one of the better things about being a surveyor. Now, what's that mean for a career as far as job opportunities? Well, they're great. Ben had mentioned earlier about, surveyors, there's a large age gap in surveying. And what that means is we have a lot of old guys that are probably going to retire soon, and we don't have enough young people to fill those positions. So if you look at this chart, the blue is 2021 data for the number of surveyors by age group, and the orange is 2011, so 10-year difference. And you can see the drop in the 50-year-old age range. It's huge. So if you think about the number of surveyors that are into retirement age, which is 60 and over, and compare that to the guys that are under 40, it's a huge lopsided deal. And the question is, who's going to fill those shoes? How are we going to continue our profession without more surveyors coming in? And I think I've described it. It's a great profession. I just don't think that many students like myself knew anything about it. To look at some of the metrics here, 2021, there were 2,373 professional land surveyors. In 2011, 2,547. It's been a steady decrease every year. for the past 10 years and beyond. If you looked at a chart 10 years before that, it's still a steady decline. And so we need to start changing those numbers. But what it means for the young people is there's going to be opportunity for you there. There's going to be the likelihood of higher salaries. And I really encourage you to explore options in land surveying. As far as education goes, there's two main colleges or main universities that have surveying programs. Probably the most notable is Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They have what's called a geomatics program. The great thing is it's not far from here, and you can go there and get a 4-year degree in surveying, as well as at University of Texas Tyler. Both those offer 4-year degrees in surveying. That's your shortest route probably to becoming a land surveyor, a licensed land surveyor. Once you have that education, you don't have to wait as long or get as much experience before taking your test. And then if for the community colleges, there's a list of them here that all offer good programs in surveying or drafting. So take a look at those, explore them, and see if something strikes your interest. With that, I'd like to leave it with one of my favorite memes, and it's 3 surveyors and another guy. We've got George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln. We're all 3 land surveyors. And then as their second job, they worked as presidents as well. But so it's pretty interesting. There's several famous people like this that at some point in time worked as land surveyors. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
That is a great career path. So to end up as president. So thank you both. And as far as some questions for you all, that one question is for the high school students out there, what type of classes do you wish you could have taken back in high school to prepare you, or what would you suggest if these careers pique interest in high school students that they take?
I would take the highest level mathematics you can, pass calculus if possible. And in addition to that, any type of drafting classes that might be offered at your school. In technology classes, just, understanding computers is a big part of it.
Hey, Kathy, it's ironic that all 3 of our presenters all had basically the same answer.
Yes.
For whether it was engineering or GIS or surveying. I think they all kind of agreed that, drafting and math were the courses that at least in our field would be really important.
Yes.
I do want to add one comment as far as, Brandon was talking about the surveyors and the salaries. When I started in this industry back in 1986, there was a really big gap between salaries between surveyors and engineers. But, I think as that gap, it just started shrinking as far as the salary gaps. And I think that it's almost balanced out where a graduate engineer and a graduate surveyor are going to be almost at the same starting position. And actually the same opportunity for growth. So from a career perspective and, from a salary analysis, very similar salary ranges for both professions.
That's a very good, interesting point. Is there I don't want to ask this, like a crossover, like if a person does go through the GIS or the surveying degree program in that, to cross over then into civil engineering? I imagine quite a few of those courses are recognized. Does that give a person a jump start into the engineering side?
I would say it'd be easier to go the other way, to get an engineering degree and then move into surveying. And there's a lot of people that have done that. There's a lot of engineers by education. They have an engineering degree that never got licensed as a professional engineer, but did get licensed as a professional surveyor. And then there's a few, and it's nowhere near as common as it used to be, that have both, like Ben does. But I'd say if you wanted to pursue engineering as your goal, I would recommend, going into an engineering program first. Because with a surveying degree, you probably still need quite a few classes to qualify to become a professional engineer.
Yeah, I would echo that. And that was a path that I took. You know, my goal was to become a licensed engineer first. And then as I started working and getting involved in all sorts of projects and different tasks, some of those evolved into surveying type assignments. And then I started pursuing my surveying license. And so the engineering degree really helped with that. And so it was a fairly easy transition to go from an engineer to a surveyor. A little bit of work, you know, a lot of studying, because the engineering degree we may have had one survey class through the engineering program in college. So a lot of that was just self-taught or working, working in the field and not really through education on the survey side. But that's definitely the route to go on the engineering side. That'll transition to surveying if that's a path someone wants to go.
And it struck me just now that with the drones and the boats that do some of the survey work for you, would robotics be a good class for high school students to take?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt. You'd be more on the technical side of surveying. Certainly what we use is robotics. But I don't want to, kind of exaggerate on that. It's not like I'm going in there and, or most surveyors aren't going in there and programming their robots to do specific things. We kind of buy them already built, but it's definitely something related to surveying, and it will be continue to be in the future.
Yeah, at least not right now, Brandon. I'll just add to that if we had a robot that could go out into the marsh and find corners, that we wouldn't have to send our live crew members out there. That'd be great. So that's definitely something that we're really excited about tech in the future and what's going to be out there, especially in this field. You know, we've had conversations about drones going out and finding corners, so that's sort of a robotic, type application, but all sorts of opportunities are out there to be discovered, and we're excited about those. And once we hear about things, we certainly investigate them and see, hey, can we put that into application in our business? So we're always on the lookout for cutting edge technology that makes our job a lot easier. And the most important part of that is safety. So if we can have an application that will get our surveyors out of the middle of traffic, that's definitely something that we want to do, because safety is a big, big component of everything that we do.
Very true. Bryn, what would you say have been some of the largest challenges you have faced in your career?
Certainly one of the largest challenges is becoming licensed. It's not an easy task. It's not like you just wake up one day and become a surveyor. It takes years working under an RPLS, learning from them, learning on your own, many nights of studying, and then passing the actual exam, which has the exam rate has about a 50% pass rate. So it's not something you can just wake up and do. I studied for several months. We've got another person here that's about to take the exam, and they've been studying for several months. So that's probably one of the biggest hurdles, when it comes to the career as a land surveyor.
Is there a limit to the number of times you can retake the test if you don't pass?
Kind of. So I think it works. You take the test one time. If you fail, I think you can take it again the next year. But I think it's after you fail 2 or 3 times, and you have to wait a year between tests. So as far as timing, it can stretch it out, and they only offer the test twice a year, so it's every 6 months.
I hadn't thought to ask the other presenters this, but with those tests, are the tests on computer, or are they?
Right now, it's a Scantron exam, so it's a paper copy, and you just fill out a Scantron.
And I know lifelong learning is very important, and the other speakers have touched a bit on continuing education. What have you used as far as continuing education that you've taken, Brandon?
So as RPLS, you're required to have 12 continuing education hours a year. 3 of those are based on rules and ethics. So it's ethics as a land surveyor, making sure you're making the right decision for the public, not necessarily the right decision for your client. An example of that is you find their property line is, 3 feet past where their fence is. Well, the ethical thing to do would say, hey, your property line is past the fence, and not fudge the numbers. So we take 3 hours every year for that. And then the other remaining hours for various types of surveying of all the different disciplines that we tackle. And there's courses, there's online courses. I did a course a couple of years ago where we went out to the river in Concan, to the Frio River. And we spent 3 days out there surveying in the field. We got rained out a lot, but part of that course is they take you out to a bat cave that's full of all these, I think it's Mexican free-tail bats, if I remember right. And you get to see them fly out and stuff. And you go down to the river and learn how to survey the river and determine river boundaries. We use some of that old equipment, the gunner's chain and the compass. And so there's some fun continuing education out there. So that's kind of the story of that.
It sounds a lot more exciting than the chemical engineering trainings and recertification.
Surveyors like to have fun.
Yeah, yes. So, any other comments you would offer up to high school students?
I'd say give surveying a shot. Explore it. You can come talk to me. There's a Texas Society of Professional Surveyors that a lot of surveyors are members of. I invite you to reach out to your local chapter and look at coming to a meeting. And I'm sure there's plenty of guys out there that would like to share their knowledge. And if you get a chance in the summer, look for an internship to work as a surveyor. There's always companies looking for some extra help, for the guys, especially in the heat. It's nice to have some young people out there to handle the brunt of the physical work, but also you get to learn a lot. So that's my suggestion, is just explore it.
I do want to comment on the internship with surveyors because we do have these guys out in the field, and as a company, we do have an age requirement of being 18 years old to work on our survey crew. So that's just a limitation, but it's certainly an opportunity, and we welcome internships for those that qualify.
Okay. Ben, any closing thoughts from you?
No, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, surveying is just it's a very exciting field. We hear about this 5G technology that's going to be coming out, and what impact is that going to have to our surveying industry? It's all about data and transferring data, making it quicker, and so there's just a lot of great opportunities, I think, that are going to be there, and what's here today may change next year very quickly. So the tech part of this is what's really exciting, and we here at Civil Corps, we want to stay on top of it and kind of be on the forefront of any of that tech that we can be, so that we can do our jobs just a whole lot quicker and more safely and keep projects on schedule.
Well, very good. Well, gentlemen, we thank both of you, both Ben and Brandon. Thank you so much for taking your time to prepare and then to visit with us this afternoon about your educational and career and personal experiences in the field. You've given us some great information, and again, thanks for the openness and the tips about how to be successful. For those of you that are joining us out in cyberspace, again, this recording will be posted up to YouTube shortly for you to view again. And by all means, teachers and students, do share this with others who might be interested in a career in an exciting field of civil engineering. So with that, we bid you all good day.
Thank you.